Andrews from Sachs, and welcome to video number 6 in our 8-video series on leadership for resilience and engagement. And in this particular video, we'll be talking about the link between resilience and engagement. In the subsequent 2 videos, the last in the sequence, we'll be talking about how leaders can optimize resilience and engagement in their workforce. But first, let's talk about the link between the two. Research, particularly the study from Simons and Buitendach in 2013, and also more recent studies, has indicated that there is a strong link between resilience and engagement. Now, resilience is an individual characteristic, and I mentioned in earlier videos how a person's personality, as well as their skills, can cause them to become more or less resilient. But engagement is a group-based characteristic. So a particular work group, when you measure, let's say, the 15 or 20 people in that work group, can be identified as having certain levels of engagement. But one of the things that we know is that if an organisation or a work group can improve its levels of engagement, this also tends to improve individual levels of resilience at a person level. Now, this is an important characteristic of well-being. So increasing levels of engagement also increases levels of individual resilience, and what that's doing is it's lifting the levels of well-being of that work group. Now, one of the important things that we need to do is to define what we mean by work engagement, and it has these 3 characteristics: vigour, dedication, and absorption. Vigour is the sense of energy that people bring to their work. So I'm enthusiastic, I want to get out of bed in the morning, I really like my work. Dedication is a sense of commitment, where I believe that the work is important and I actually try hard to get better at it. Absorption is kind of like a characteristic called flow. Flow means when you're doing something, you kind of get immersed in it, time flies, you're happily engrossed is the term that's often used, happily engrossed in what you do. So you come to work, you get involved in your work group, you start doing your work, you're happy doing it, and you don't notice that time is passing. Now, if you have these 3 characteristics, there is a very strong business case for engagement measured in this way. Firstly, people who have this level of engagement or a positive level of engagement tend to have better internal outcomes, such as staff turnover, productivity. And productivity, I mean both in quantity and quality of work. But a highly engaged work group also has better external outcomes. Things like levels of profit in an organisation, levels of revenue growth, levels of satisfaction of customers and stakeholders, levels of service quality as perceived by the people who are receiving those services. All of that is advantaged by higher levels of engagement. And it's been shown that as it goes up, these things go up, and as that goes down, these things go down. But you're also getting an individual benefit from resilience, because when a work group is more engaged, the individuals involved in that work group will be better able to cope with negative circumstances. Now, one of the other characteristics of high levels of engagement is this characteristic called job crafting. I often talk about the in-on challenge of work. And what I mean by the in-on challenge of work is that when people work in their jobs, they can become so engrossed in them that they don't find time to stand back and work on their jobs. Now, what I mean by working on a job is where you stand back and you try to improve things. You might try to improve processes, find more efficient ways of doing things, try to find more fun ways of doing things, try to find easier ways of doing things. And if you have high levels of engagement, people will be able more to stand back from their work, and they'll have the energy to reflect on their work and to improve it. Now, job crafting is where people focus on outcomes rather than emotions. And by the way, as demonstrated in earlier videos, that is something that increases people's levels of resilience. People who focus too much on their emotions tend to become less resilient. People who are highly engaged tend to build their own resources, redesign their jobs to do them better, manage and proactively acquire the resources necessary to do their job. Collaboration tends to be higher when people are highly engaged, and that's all part of job crafting. And interestingly, when people are highly engaged, they often increase their work demands. They'll take on extra projects, they'll take on work which is of its nature intellectually challenging, and that helps to build levels of engagement and therefore resilience. Now, this diagram from the same article by Bakker and Demaruti, where they talked about the fact that levels of engagement are driven by a combination of job resources and personal resources. So let's talk about personal resources. In an earlier video, I showed you that a person who has a positive, conscientious, energized, and emotionally stable personality, which is partially a genetically determined characteristic, is much more likely to be resilient. Well, they're also much more likely to be engaged in their work. So that's an important thing to know. But also, a personal resource is my value set. So if I come to a job and my value set matches the nature of the job, then I'm much more likely to be personally engaged in that work. Then there are job resources. Now, when people hear the term job resources, I think they often think of things like computers and offices and parking spaces and all of those sorts of things. Those things are not anywhere near as important as the following four things: job, team, leader, and organisation. So my job is incredibly important to me. If the job has characteristics like variety, empowerment, role clarity, I'm much more likely to be highly engaged in my work. The second is the team that I belong to. If I'm part of a team that's positive, energetic, focused on getting a good result, and supportive to me, of course, I'm much more likely to be engaged. If my leader is a positive person who creates role clarity for me, who cares about me, and who creates a situation where the team around me are cohesive and effective, then of course I'm much more likely to be engaged. And the fourth characteristic is the organisation I belong to, which is, perhaps some people will see this as paradoxical, but it's the least important. It accounts for around about 20% of people's well-being. That's what estimates from research show us. So the job, the team, and the leader are much more important because they're really close to me. In a sense, an organisation is a kind of a concept. It's an abstraction. So it's not unimportant, and it certainly can affect the behaviour of the leaders and the team, but it's not anywhere near as important as the immediate environment that I work in: my job, my team, and my leader. If you have a situation where people have strong job resources and personal resources, of course they're much more likely to be engaged in their work. But then there's this concept of job demands. Now, job demands come in two forms: positive demands, which are things like I'm doing challenging work, and actually I'm doing a lot of work. People, in fact, tend to get less engaged if they don't have much work to do. So they're positive demands. The second is negative demands. And negative demands are things like people are being nasty to me. They're things like I've got role ambiguity. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to achieve. It might be I am being asked by different people to do different things. So I've got a situation where I've got conflicting expectations. All of those are negatives. So they moderate the relationship between the job and personal resources and work engagement. So if the job demands are positive, they will contribute to work engagement. If they're negative, they will tend to mediate or lessen work engagement. Now, we also know, as mentioned earlier, that there's a strong link between work engagement and job performance. But here's this characteristic called job crafting. If I'm highly engaged, I'm likely to do those things I mentioned earlier, like try to improve the way things work around here. Now, you'll also see that there's an arrow from job crafting back to the resources, because if I'm job crafting, I'm improving things, and that means that I'll improve my own personal resources. I'll build skills and confidence that I otherwise didn't have. But as well as that, I build my job resources because I collaborate with people, my leader will get involved, and that will tend to be a virtuous upward cycle. So there's a strong link between levels of engagement and resilience. And so in the next couple of videos, what we'll be doing is showing you some techniques to improve levels of engagement and resilience in your work groups. Click on the link near this video to join us.